Hey, good morning, friends. Got a special video for you today that was inspired by what happened on this day in history. July 18th, we're going to go all the way back to the year 64 AD. This is the day in history that Rome started burning. And this is significant, and you'll understand why in a little bit. But first I need to give you some context. Those of us that are followers of Jesus, those that are followers of his way and his life, those of us that would call ourselves Christians, can find a lot of significance on what happened today. Because people that want to discredit Christianity, people who want to discredit especially the resurrection of Jesus, will say that that myth, that story didn't develop until hundreds of years later. They'll say that, Jesus was a nice guy, but he died and he stayed dead, and it wasn't until the 200s or the 300s that people came up with this idea that he was divine and that he came back from the dead. And they'll make up that story that was a fable that developed much later. Here's the problem with that. Like I said, on this day, July 18th, in 64 AD, Rome started burning, and no doubt you've heard of the burning of Rome. What you may not know is that it nearly decimated the entire empire. Only 3 of their 14 districts were so badly destroyed by that fire. Nero, the emperor of Rome, wanted to pin the blame on somebody. And you know who he blamed for the burning of Rome. He blamed the Christians. And he used that event in history to start to martyr and execute and wipe out hundreds of Christians, maybe thousands of Christians that were living there in Rome. But here's what I want you to see. How could Nero have blamed the Christians if that myth, if that superstition didn't develop until hundreds of years later? Right? If Jesus had just died and stayed dead, then no one would have begun to follow him. No one would have believed in him. But just 30 years after his death, Jesus dies and is resurrected in about 33 AD. Just 30 years later, in 64 AD, there are hundreds, if not thousands of Christians, not only right in Jerusalem, but hundreds of miles away in Rome. You see, the resurrection of Jesus sparked something unprecedented in history. And people as far away as Rome began to believe that Jesus really was who he said he was. He really was the way back to God, the God who had come to rescue and save us. And the fact that Nero could blame the burning of Rome on Christians is proof that there were hundreds of Christians following the risen Jesus within one generation of Jesus' resurrection. And so take confidence in the fact that on this day in history, in the year 64 AD, we think back on those martyrs of our faith, but those ones who now we can look at as evidence that Christianity started right when Jesus said it did, with his resurrection in the early 1st century. So take that with you today. Take confidence that we follow not something that was made up, not some myth, but something that is grounded in the events of history, including the events that happened on this day.